Now at 5, authorities in Parsons, Kansas charge a man suspected in multiple incidents this week. Plus, an RV coach manufacturer announces a multi-million-dollar expansion in Ottawa County, Oklahoma. And
the bill to avert default is now headed to the president's desk. I'm Natalie Brand at the White House with new reaction to the deal.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Authorities in Parsons, Kansas have charged a man after he was arrested following a standoff with police. This is KOAM News at 5. I'm Jalen Banks. Stadarish Herman is charged with 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder, criminal discharge of a firearm at an occupied dwelling, and aggravated endangerment of a child. Police arrested him yesterday evening after a standoff at Parsons Village apartment complex. Police surrounded the complex and Herman initially refused to come out, but police later entered the apartment and arrested him without incident. You can read more about the case on our website at KOAMnewsnow.com. The search continues this afternoon for an armed and dangerous escapee from the Barton County, Missouri jail. Take a look at this mugshot. Berry County deputies are looking for Mario Che-Tol, who was in county jail for child molestation charges. The sheriff's office said he was one in a group of inmates that overpowered and assaulted 2 correctional officers late last night. All the other escapees are back in custody. Again, Che-Tol is considered armed and dangerous. If you have any information about his location, you are asked to call the police. The city of Miami has selected a new fire chief. Chris Chenoweth started as a Miami firefighter in 2013, and he was promoted to deputy chief in 2022. The fire department is staffed by 23 firefighters. Chenoweth said he plans for more aggressive training before the end of the year to prepare for more specific situations such as tower collapses and water rescue situations. Newell Coach, a leading luxury RV coach manufacturer in Miami, Oklahoma, is preparing for a $7.5 million expansion project, supported by $2 million in funding from the Oklahoma Department of Commerce. In April, the company received notification of approval for the award under the state's Business Expansion Incentive Program. This funding will enable Newell Coach to establish a state-of-the-art 150,000 square foot office complex, address stormwater runoff concerns on its premises, and generate employment opportunities.
We've been growing for a number of years. Our employee count has grown from 165 to probably 200 over the last 5 or 6 years. So we've experienced some growth. COVID certainly helped that growth. So at this point, we need more room to grow.
The Business Expansion Incentive Program assists Oklahoma companies making major capital investments in items like machinery, equipment, and buildings. Folks are gathering at downtown Fort Scott, Kansas today to celebrate Good Old Days. This is the 42nd year for Good Old Days. According to festival organizers, the event started in the 1800s. It was discontinued, then resurrected in 1981. While it's meant to celebrate Fort Scott's past, it brings in visitors from outside Bourbon County as well. And now meteorologist Sam Lane joins us live from Fort Scott.
All right, Jalen, we're here in Fort Scott enjoying good old days here in downtown Fort Scott, and I have with me Lieutenant Eastwood and also Lieutenant Bell, and they're going to talk a little bit about some of the safety concerns that we might have. You know, they're expecting a lot of people, thousands of people, in fact, right?
Sure. Yeah, so, obviously the temperature's going to be warm. We want everybody to stay hydrated. We encourage you to drink lots of water, lots of Gatorade. We've got lots of vendors downtown where you can get most of that. We'll also have a station set up at City Hall, 123 South Main. And at that location, we're going to have some EMS staff. If something happens, you can go down there and they will meet the ambulances if that's needed.
All right, and traffic, is a concern as well. So, Lieutenant Bell, what kind of street closures are we looking at here in Fort Scott to enjoy good old days?
So streets are essentially closed on Main Street from Old Fort Boulevard down here all the way down to 3rd Street. We have a parade that starts at 6th. The streets will be closed down to 6th Street during the parade, but they'll come back and close down to 3rd afterwards. Essentially, the side streets on Main will be closed throughout the entire event through tomorrow evening at 11.
And so you're just encouraging people to kind of take it slow and easy, give some time for the pedestrians to cross the streets. And, of course, there's going to be officers throughout the entire event.
Absolutely.
Yes, and we just asked, if you're driving around this area, try to be slow. When you're on the side streets, be mindful of pedestrians. And obviously, if you're going to have alcoholic beverages, we just ask that you be responsible about that and find a designated driver.
All right. Well, there you have it. Let's take a look at radar and show you what's going on right now. We have some storms way off towards the west in western parts of our viewing area. Big storms in south central Kansas this afternoon, but unfortunately, that's where they're staying. They're not really moving in our direction. Zooming in on some of the storms closer in, we have some showers near Ozark, north of Iola, and north of Bronson, and also in northeastern Woodson County. And a little bit further to the south, we have some storms in Chautauqua County around Sedan and Cedarville, which is where they desperately need the rainfall, as they've been in a very severe drought. Even here in Fort Scott, we're about 18.5 inches below normal over this last year. So we could use some rain, but we just don't want any rain on the parade here tonight at 6 o'clock in Fort Scott. Of course, come on out and enjoy it. We have lots of activities going on, and so it looks like it's going to be a great evening here in Fort Scott. Back to you, Jay.
That was Sam Lane live from Fort Scott. President Biden says he will soon sign the bipartisan bill that raises the nation's debt ceiling and spending cuts. The legislation allows the U.S. government to pay its bills, averting a default and potential economic crisis. Reporter Natalie Brand is at the White House with the latest.
President Biden is addressing the nation tonight on the deal that heads off a historic default.
There is a gravity, as you all can imagine, of this moment, and so the president wanted to make sure that he addressed the American people directly.
The bill is passed.
The Senate passed the bipartisan measure late Thursday with more than 60 voting in favor. The bill raises the nation's debt limit beyond the 2024 presidential election. The Congressional Budget Office estimates it also cuts spending by about $1.5 trillion over the next decade. In a last-minute negotiation, Senate leaders pledged commitments to consider emergency spending down the road and additional military aid to support the war in Ukraine, after some GOP senators raised concerns about limits to defense spending.
There's not a penny in this budget to help beat Putin.
President Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy negotiated the deal. Political analysts say the mixed reviews from lawmakers across the political spectrum make it the very definition of compromise.
Both sides actually made concessions, and we should be, as Americans, proud about seeing our government work in such a fashion.
Joe Biden came into this saying that he refused to negotiate, and at the end of the day, he finally caved and gave Republicans some spending cuts that we needed as a country.
The bill now heads to the White House for a signature just ahead of Monday's deadline, when the Treasury Secretary said the U.S. would start running short of cash to pay its bills. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
Credit rating agency Fitch is warning it could still downgrade the U.S. credit rating despite the debt ceiling deal. Still ahead, the path forward after cancer.
The importance of exercise for cancer survivors. I'm Naomi Ruckham with how staying active can help body and mind.
Plus, what a new study shows about adolescents, alcohol, and depression. Those stories next in Health Watch. Topping today's Health Watch, adolescents who show signs of being dependent on alcohol are more likely to develop depression by their mid-20s. A new study by British researchers looked at nearly 4,000 young people in England. They found those who couldn't stop drinking, couldn't function normally while drinking, or had memory loss from drinking, among other factors, had a higher risk of depression several years later. National Cancer Survivors Day is this Sunday. More than 18 million people in the U.S. are living with a history of cancer. Exercise is recommended for survivors before, during, and after cancer treatment. Naomi Ruckham introduces us to a group taking it step by step.
These women meet every week to walk and talk.
I'm out and I'm just being normal. I don't have to think about my disease. I don't have to think about my next treatment.
They're all cancer survivors. 9 years ago, Mimi Schneer was diagnosed with ovarian cancer and is currently in treatment for her 5th recurrence. She says walking helps in many ways.
And sometimes we do talk about the disease, and that's okay too, because now we're sharing information.
The walking group is just one of several programs offered by the Nancy Marks Cancer Wellness Center.
And for cancer survivors, it's really important to walk every day.
Susan Stein is a cancer wellness social worker.
Research shows that the direct impact that physical exercise has on your mental and physical health, reducing anxiety and depression, reducing side effects from treatment.
The American Cancer Society recommends survivors avoid inactivity and return to normal activities as soon as possible after diagnosis and treatment. Take part in regular physical activity, start slowly, and build up over time.
When you go through a diagnosis and a treatment and a lot of other things in your life, you don't always have control. So it's just something that we can do for ourselves.
Pamela Goldstein was diagnosed with an aggressive breast cancer in 2017. She didn't exercise during her initial treatment, but recommends it.
It's one step at a time. It sounds so cliche, but it's the smallest thing. I mean, even to come here and walk for a half an hour, you know, you make a connection.
Getting in their steps and getting support. Naomi Ruckham, CBS News.
That's a look at today's health news, and Sam Lane is next with a complete look at the forecast, and later, jobs.
A better than expected jobs report. I'm Astrid Martinez with the numbers and what the Fed may do next.
All right, welcome back to the KOAM News at 5. We are live in Fort Scott, downtown Fort Scott, and I have here with me Mel Gray from the St. Louis Cardinals from 1971 to 1982, 121 consecutive catches and 4 Pro Bowls. What in the world brings you to Fort Scott today, Mel?
You know, I came to Fort Scott back in 1967 from Santa Rosa, California. A young man named Charles Caldry, Coach Stern and Chores came out to recruit me to come here. Didn't know anything about Kansas, didn't know anything about the Midwest. Came out for a visit. It was nice, warm, humid. I thought I can deal with it until winter. Oh, I've never been this cold before in my life.
Right.
But coming back, had a great time playing football here, running track, met a lot of people. A lot of them are not here to celebrate some of this stuff with me. But some of the family is still around. Some of the ball players that I was with are around. A good friend of mine, Tyrone Walls, is in Chicago, but another friend of mine.
So you have lots of friends and stuff that are here. Are they?
They're here, or they came back. Yes, I think there was a class reunion, and some of the guys that are affiliated with it are here. So we're having a great time.
Well, that's great. Well, we are celebrating good old days here in Fort Scott, and we do have some showers and thunderstorms on radar. First, let's take a look at Indigo Sky Casino and Resort. You can see down to the south in Seneca, Missouri, a pretty nice evening shaping up across the area. Same thing across the entire area. Let's take a look at the current conditions in Fort Scott. We're looking at temperatures in the upper 80s. Dew points are in the low 60s, so it's making it feel a little bit sticky out there, but not too bad. Now let's take a look and show you what's going on the radar. We have some scattered storms, but they're mainly out towards the west, really not impacting our area here in eastern parts of Kansas. But we're going to see some storm chances start to increase as we go into the weekend. But let's take a look at the temperatures across the region right now. Generally in the upper 80s everywhere. A few mid 80s off towards the east where it's a little bit cooler. Let's take a look at the rain chances over the next 36 hours. You'll notice that the rain chances are going to start to increase as we go through the weekend, but especially on Saturday. In fact, by Saturday, isolated areas could pick up an inch or so in some isolated spots, but most areas are going to stay on the light side as far as precipitation goes. And looking over the forecast, we're looking at partly cloudy skies tonight with lows in the mid-60s. And then as we head into tomorrow afternoon, that's when we're going to see the scattered storms come back into our forecast with highs in the mid to upper 80s. And then as we go into Sunday morning, we're going to see mostly fair and mild conditions with lows once again in the mid-60s. And then Sunday afternoon, lesser of a chance of thunderstorms, but there could be a few scattered around with highs in the low to mid-80s. And then on Monday morning, we're going to see mild conditions once again with lows in the mid-60s. And how about the next 7 to 10 days? Well, we have the chance of showers and storms tomorrow, lesser on Sunday. And then as we head into Monday and Tuesday, even lesser chance with highs getting close to 90 degrees. But we do have a backdoor cold front coming through on Wednesday, so we'll cool it down a little bit into the lower 80s on Wednesday. And then next weekend, that's when the next chance of storms comes back in, especially for your Sunday. But all in all, not a bad forecast, and certainly not a bad evening to come out and enjoy good old days here in downtown Fort Scott. Back to you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Sam. Kids in Neosho spent their Friday out by the water catching some fish. The Neosho National Fish Hatchery today hosted its annual fishing derby. Kids between the ages of 7 and 12 could compete and were able to catch up to 4 fish. Officials say this event gives kids a valuable chance to get outdoors and have some fun.
We have volunteers to help everybody that don't know how to fish. We got volunteers to help them learn how to fish, help them put bait on the hook. We got volunteers to help them take fish off the hook. So this is a community event, and we couldn't do this event without the community.
This is the second fishing derby the hatchery has held this year. And coming up, why Costco executives say their customer shopping habits could be signaling a recession. Topping today's Consumer Watch, new government data shows a hot labor market, adding more jobs in last month than economists expected. But the report comes with some mixed messaging, an uptick in unemployment. Reporter Ashley Martinez takes a closer look at the numbers.
The glass is half full for the U.S. labor market, adding jobs in industries from restaurants to construction to healthcare. Some sectors are still struggling to play pandemic catch-up.
It's been a challenge for small businesses, especially within the retail sector and the hourly workforce and finding people to work.
A better than expected jobs report shows employers added 339,000 jobs in May, the best since January. But the unemployment rate rose to 3.7%, up from a 5-decade low in April.
That increase in the month of May meant that there were 440,000 additional Americans who were unemployed.
Job numbers for the 2 previous months were revised up, showing a labor market that continues to absorb inflation and a string of rate hikes from the Fed, which had signaled a potential pause at its upcoming meeting.
Given the strength of this report, we have to assume that a rate increase is back on the table.
The youth labor force typically grows this time of year, which could help fill a nationwide lifeguard shortage.
Since COVID in 2020, our numbers in lifeguards have really gone down.
Many cities have increased pay and are offering lucrative bonuses to get guards back in the pool. The robust jobs report tamps down concerns of the dreaded R word.
Right now, by the numbers, we are not in a recession. Growth is slowing down, but it has not fallen off a cliff.
The report also shows a shorter work week for some and a slowdown in wages, part of a complex jobs picture. Astrid Martinez, CBS News, New York.
Meta wants its workers back in the office. Starting September 5th, employees assigned to an office will work 3 in-person 3 days a week. Those who are designated as remote workers can keep that status. Meta, which owns Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, says the updated policy is not set in stone. Executives at the warehouse chain Costco told investors on the call that recent shopper habits are signaling that a recession is on the way. Costco says they're seeing more and more customers switch from steaks and beef to cheaper meats like pork and chicken. And some shoppers are skipping the fresh meat aisle altogether in order to cut costs and are instead going for canned meat and fish products. A final check of the forecast next. Up next on the CBS Evening News, Steve Hart takes us on the road to Ohio for a wedding and a bridge you won't soon forget. Then on KOAM News at 6, a project manager hired to clean up lead-contaminated soil at Granby, Missouri City Park is sentenced in federal court. Plus, we'll have more on the multi-million-dollar expansion of an RV coach company into Ottawa County, Oklahoma. And Webb City Baseball is competing for a spot in the state finals. We'll have the highlights. Stay with us for the CBS Evening News and then KOAM News at 6. All right, Sam, what's the final look at the weather for today?
All right, we are in downtown Fort Scott enjoying good old days this evening. A beautiful night shaping up across the area. A few scattered storms way off towards the west. Tomorrow the forecast looks about the same with a little bit more coverage of storms, but still not enough to really keep you away. And temperatures in the upper 80s to right around 90 degrees. Then it gets a little bit cooler midweek next week, and then another round of storms possible on Sunday of next weekend. But all in all, not a bad forecast. A little bit on the hot side, but it is after all June, so not too bad as far as that goes. Back to you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for joining us. Your CBS Evening News is next. Let's make it a great evening.